It's even more interesting. So tell me, man, what's your name?
My name's Fred. Fred Guevara. I read books, walk around the park with books on my head.
So what's the thought behind this?
First it was I set off on a quest to understand what righteousness and wisdom was. And so I thought, well, okay, I'll start with my own religion. I'm Catholic, and I went to ancient Hebrew to study. So I read all the books. Actually read all the non-canonical books and the books that tell you not to read that they took out the Bible before I ever actually read the Bible all the way through. Yeah. But I think in doing that, it helped me understand a lot more about what the Bible was talking about. But also I didn't stop there, because I realized that the thing is, even though we're all different and we all worship differently and have different ideas, it's pretty much all about the same thing. So, righteousness is overall, regardless of what language you speak or, who you are. So I started to read the Bhagavad Gita and all these other ancient books, trying to piece together where it is we are definitively different and separate. But everything I read overlaps on top of each other. It's just called by a different name or understood in a different aspect. And so it's been very interesting. So I'm still on the quest for righteousness and wisdom. It's
Always.
Just I started putting on oils and praying before I read, and so I thought, well, let me put my book on my head real quick to do this. And then I thought, well, that didn't fall off. Can I keep them all up there? So just started, and it's a good exercise in balance. It's a good exercise in knowing my center. A good exercise in busying my body so that my mind can focus. Even a good exercise in no mind, because I actually have to get to a point where they're not even there. I'm not even paying attention. If I'm worried about it, then I won't be able to focus. So that's what it is.
So in all the studies, I agree with you totally. Also, let me say, but is there any just like small thing you would say, to people out there seeking wisdom or?
Well, the one thing I would say is, I think it started with me with the word righteousness. I was listening to a lot of reggae music, and in reggae music, Rasta and righteousness, and they talk very biblically, and I was like, how can these guys come with this fervor and say these things? But then I started to understand what righteousness was, and wisdom is just the love or adoration of what is righteous. So
it's like the practice of what is actually right.
Well, not necessarily the practice, but the understanding of what you should do. Now, whether or not you act on it, that's a whole different thing. But the point is not necessarily that we defined exactly what righteousness is for everyone, because we're all different. Everything, it's all different. But there is something that connects the righteousness in all of us. Otherwise we wouldn't understand what the word means.
Yeah.
We couldn't understand each other when we talk about it. So it's not, like I said, it's not important that you set this is what's righteous and everybody has to go with it. It's important that you try and understand within yourself what is righteous, what rings true within yourself, in your heart. And then once you do that, you have to look around and be like, okay, well, I understand my center, my heart. Now I got to understand the center of everything else. So this is me trying to understand the center of the books, like they're myself, becoming one with them. So once you do that, then you can close your eyes. You don't even have to use your eyes. You can see with your heart, because you can feel what's good, and you go in that direction. You don't have to worry about what you see, because your eyes generally lie to you anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's deep, but I think it's necessary. And also a lot of people are like, oh, how can you do that? And I'm like, well, you only stop yourself when you say, oh, I can't do that, or there's no way, or I don't understand. Once you say that, you'll never understand. Don't say that. All you have to do is just go with it.
Use the tools.
When I started reading all these books, there was a lot of words that I was like, wow, what is that? But instead of putting the book down because I didn't understand the vernacular, I was like, all right, I'm going to assume that this means what they're talking about. And then, I'll go look it up later and find out, okay, yeah. But you have to, by the time you say no, you cut yourself off. So you just can't say no.
Yeah.
Essentially. But yeah, man, it's great. And I tell everybody, I was like, look, I know this is what I do, but I think
different ways.
Well, and not only that, but also I think within you, within every one of us, there's the ability to do this and more. Everything we see great people do not saying that I'm great or anything, but you know, the people that we look up to is like, wow, there's no way I could ever do that. Well, no, not anymore. But if you were to understand that they are you in a different form,
Exactly.
you know, you start to wrap your mind around the fact that, okay, I can't. And see, here's where this is this is what faith, and people get it so misconstrued. It's not faith in any one thing. It's just a matter that you do believe, because once you start to believe, oh,
Yeah,
hey, I can
exactly.
do this, you can do it. But if we're doubt all the time, we'll never be able to do much.
Exactly.
I don't mean to keep you.
No, thanks a lot. And so one last thing.
Yeah.
So you've been working on your personal wisdom, your personal uprightness. So
Yes.
now that you've built yourself up a bit, how would you like to share that, or what can you offer now? Like, now that you've accumulated this, well, how can?
Well, this is kind of my way of sharing it, in that even though I'm not really communicating anything to anyone as I walk by, just wow, okay, wow, how, you know, it's like seeing great architecture and you're like, man, this is awesome, but you don't understand the math. But there's math in there, that like a formula that makes this thing righteous.
Yes.
All you see is the beauty of it, and you're
Yeah.
like, whoa. So in a sense, even that way, I'm doing something. And of course, when you stop and talk to me, I don't do it to
You're
everyone.
generous and you're so yourself that could wake people
Yes,
up through you.
Yes, and I'm not saying that I know everything, but what
Yeah.
I'm saying is, this is what I've learned, and hoping honestly that others will be like, oh, well, did you know this, or did you know that? I mean,
Yeah.
because I can't read all the books on myself. By myself. But like I said, we're all connected. We all have abilities that we don't give ourselves credit for. But once we start taking that leap of faith,
Mhm.
you know, understanding that what you believe does affect, you know, the world, and so you have to really start looking at, well, now what I believe, is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? You know?
Well-
So just the one word in and of itself starts to make you really question, whoa, what's going on with me, and
Yeah.
what is everyone else doing, you know, and
Yeah.
why is this? Because if you just look at the news, you go nuts, man.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, one last thing.
Yeah,
one
yeah,
last thing. So just one word or a few words, what does the world need more of right now? Or the Western world that we live in?
Well, honestly, interestingly enough, I guess I would have to say meditation.
Awareness.
Yes, in a sense, yes, but yes and no. There's different kinds of meditation, but certainly a meditation, a rumination, you know, thinking of these things, a deeper thinking, not just, because everything we know, even our names, are just the tip of the iceberg of the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
If you start to understand the true meaning of words, and I say names because that's one of the things that kind of jumped me off too, was as I started learning all these things, I started understanding the meaning of my name. And my name, Frederick, is German for quiet ruler.
Mhm.
My name, Dan, is Hebrew for judged by God. And my last name, Guevara, is also a derivative of the Hebrew word Geburah, which is the left hand or judgment of God in awe of fire. Well, the crazy thing about all that is I am, in the Chinese zodiac, I'm a fire dragon, right? Okay, interesting. Well, I was born in February, so I heard somewhere that dragons are hibernating during that time of the year. So what's more a quiet ruler than a sleeping dragon, right? But here's where it even gets even more nuts. As I'm reading all this ancient Hebrew stuff, I read a story about a guy who bugged God and like, please let me get into heaven, please. You know, so many times the guy was like, okay, fine. If you can ask me these 3 questions, I'll let you into heaven. He's like, what is the what is the weight of fire? What is the measure of wind? And recall for me a day in the past. Well, the story never really answered the questions, of course, but as I heard it, I understood the weight of fire is righteousness. Because if you don't do what is righteous with fire, you pay a heavy price, whether, you know, even the heaviest price being death. So while it doesn't have a physical weight, there is a weight to it. The measure of wind is smoke. And also where there's fire, there's smoke. But because if you're looking right now, you can't really see all the swirls and the wind patterns. But if you had smoke, it would show you, all the particulates would show you
Yeah.
what's going on. So the crazy thing about that is that if that is the case, if the the weight of fire is righteousness, maybe that explains why dragons breathe fire. Because there's another story in Genesis, the Tanakh, I believe, which is the Hebrew Bible. It says that God made dragons. And it said God gave dragons dominion over everything on the earth, even the elements of the earth, to speak first on righteousness. And I'm like, all right, so if the weight of righteousness is fire and dragons are given dominion to speak first before anything on it, maybe that's why we believe they breathe fire. I mean, I don't know. It's just, a deal. But with all these things start to line up, you start to really think there may be something to this. We may be trying to tell ourselves things that we've forgotten or we dismiss, as just, oh, that's coincidence or silly, whatever. I'm not so sure. When you start looking deeper into the meaning of things. So that's what I'm saying. I think everyone should look into their name, because it even though we don't understand at the time, I don't think my parents fully understood what they were naming me.
It still plays.
It does. It falls in line. And you're like, wow.
Well, and it's the frequency that you're most resonating throughout your life over and over, because every time someone calls your name, it's the frequency they put on you. And it's the frequency you put on yourself when you're thinking about.
And what's crazy is we understand our name the least, I think.
Yeah, I ask people all the time, actually. It's one of my favorite questions is, what does your name mean when someone has an interesting name? And almost nobody knows. I'm actually more surprised when someone does know. And it's like, I tell you straight up, even if you don't know the meaning of your name, I'm sure it suits your character more than you can imagine.
Yeah, right. Well, and like I said, I understand. It's hard to think deep, but that's the work, that's the meditation. You read the Bhagavad Gita and it says meditation is the only true work. Everything else is false. Which, it's hard, but that's where Zen Buddhism goes, right? It's like sit and meditate, just clear your mind. So that's what I was saying earlier. You have the meditation of the rumination and the thinking, but also you have the meditation where you think there's nothing. You focus on nothing, you become one with nothing. Which, honestly, the Zen Buddhists go right there, but the Christian mystics, the guys who we take all our dogma from, they say by the time you get to God, you have to let go of everything anyway and clear your mind and be like nothing. So the Zen Buddhists were like, told you, from the get-go.
Yeah.
So anyway, very interesting.
So much crossover and syncretism. It's just fascinating. Like you said, the things that divide us should actually bring us together, but people at different times and places have different ways of describing things that are undescribable, basically.
Sure, exactly. And here we're like, no, this is the way it is, but
we're shooting for the essence.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the deal. It's like we should always look to what's more righteous. Like, this is what I believe righteousness is, but it's not the end all be all. And if someone else comes along and be like, hey, what about this? I should be flexible enough to be like, yeah, you're right. That is, higher than what
I think of everything in natural terms too. And like maybe gardening and one topography isn't the ideal gardening pattern in another topography.
Sure, but in the universe, it's always looking for harmony, right? It's not trying to fight each other. I mean, I know there's chaos.
It's trying to move energy around.
Yeah, to best fit. So.
Right. Well, cool. It was a pleasure meeting you, man.
I'm sorry. What was the name again?
Bret Hart.
Bret Hart. Good, man.
Yes,
Fred Guevara, man. Good to meet you.
That's a good name. That's a strong one.